Hello again. I'm Braddock Supervisor John Cook. Welcome back to Braddock Neighborhood News, the program I am using to provide you with information on issues facing our community and ideas on how we can strengthen our neighborhoods. This month, I am pleased to have with me Detective Joseph Sorrentino of the Fairfax County Police Department's Child Exploitation Unit to discuss a serious issue that we face not only in Fairfax County but nationwide. On a daily basis, our children are being targeted in a number of ways. Detective Sorrentino is here to educate us on internet safety, child exploitation, and what we can do to be vigilant and proactive in order to meet these challenges. Detective, I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
I wish we had a more fun topic to talk about, but we don't, because what you do every day is very serious, and what you see happening with our kids every day is something we really need to wake up and be aware of.
Yes. Unfortunately, the internet is a great tool, but it's like a two-edged sword. You got things that you can find that you really want, but you can find things that you don't want.
And our kids are good at finding things that we don't want them to find and that they really shouldn't find.
Yes, they are. Unfortunately, kids are inquisitive, so they're going to look for things that are out of bounds in a lot of cases. And it's a matter of growing up. And as parents, we need to try to guide them in the right direction.
And what we really kind of want to focus on here is this isn't, we were talking about the show before the show about when we were growing up before the internet. People who are predators on children, now it's not just, you have to go out and stand on the street corner and try to find a way to get some kid to come over to see you. It's the internet scams. It's the attraction that's bringing them in on their cell phones and on the computers. And tell us how the predators do this.
Well, a lot of times they will find a child online that has low self-esteem, let's say, or they'll pretend that they're a child of equal age and understand. They'll start talking in a chat room. A lot of chat rooms allow public viewing of certain chats. And when that happens, they'll see a target they might want to talk to, and they'll start talking to them and just give them the idea that they're a person that's concerned about them, but their own age group a lot of times.
And can even pose a question like, oh man, my parents have, they're just doing this and that, or they don't understand me. And then when somebody else says, yeah, I'm experiencing the same thing, you've got them.
Exactly. And they may talk to them for weeks before they broach the subject of being engaged in some kind of sexual talk. Or they may do it within 10 minutes. So it depends on how, if they want to do any grooming when they're talking to the kids.
Talk about what that means. What are these predators trying to accomplish? How do they move through those stages?
They want them to trust them. And usually you get somebody that maybe doesn't have a lot of friends, so they go to the internet to try and find friends, find excitement. They don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend. And they'll go ahead and find chatting as a way to do that. It used to be MySpace was the big place to go. Then Facebook came along. And the kids now are moving away from Facebook, and they're going just to different apps to chat to people. And they'll try some chatting sites there's one out there that's extremely bad. It's roulette chat, where you just press a button and all of a sudden you're hooked up with somebody around the world. You have no idea who you're talking to. And a lot of bad things can happen on that site. And they go from there. They may chat with somebody and say, look, I'm looking for a friend. And once they start them there, then they'll take them off to one of these other chat rooms and start talking to them there. Eventually they'll say, look, I trust you, I understand, you understand me, let's meet. And that starts down the bad road.
And sometimes these are individual predators who want to meet and have a liaison. Sometimes those predators are associated with groups, gangs, involved in trafficking, and talk about that.
Yeah, sometimes that can happen. A lot of the trafficking happens a lot more when we're dealing with children that are runaways. They'll be out looking for some place to hook up, and again, for a lot of the same reasons. They don't feel that they get what they need from home, so they'll go ahead out and look for it someplace else. Somebody say, hey, I understand, you're having a rough life, let me help you out for a while. And hey, you want to earn a lot of money, you can do this real easy. And unfortunately, it starts them down a slippery path.
Right. So let's talk about some of the way the police department's organized and some of the groups, the task forces, who you're working with. How is our structure set up to deal with child exploitation?
Well, in Fairfax County, we have the Criminal Investigation Bureau of Major Crimes, and we have this squad, which is the Child Exploitation Unit. Originally started out with only one detective being online. We now have 8 detectives that share the responsibility of being online, looking for predators. We also are responsible in our squad for checking on sex offenders that are in the county. We handle all runaways that come through Fairfax County, any court orders that go to juveniles in Fairfax County, anybody that trades in child pornography, we deal with those cases, and anybody that's willing to travel to come talk to a child or try to have sex with a child. That's what we do in an undercover status.
Okay, and so that's how the department's organized, and you work with other task forces of law enforcement?
Yes, our squad, we have the FBI that we're part of their task force. There's also, as part of the Department of Juvenile Justice, a program that's known as the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. Every state has at least one ICAC. In the state of Virginia, we're fortunate we have 2. One down in Bedford County, which started as originally, and up here in Northern Virginia, we have the Northern Virginia DC ICAC, which I'm proud to say I've been a member since it started. Our squad are all members, and the advantage is we all get the same training in the ICACs. So if a case crosses state lines or jurisdictions from Fairfax County down to Prince William County, we can contact a detective that's been trained the same as me or my fellow detectives, and they know the questions they ask, they know what we need to make a good case and bring it to court.
And we've been talking about child exploitation. Let's look at that word exploitation, because it can mean so many different things, and talk a little bit about that.
Well, it can mean anything from a child that gets in trouble sexually with an individual, or it could be they're exploited by their images taken and then distributed across the internet. They may have their identity taken, and then it becomes a situation of identity theft. Our squad deals with the sexual aspect with children online. We have another squad that deals with child abuse. So we sort of split up, but we also merge a lot of our cases together.
And what aged kids are we talking about? I mean, if a parent's out there watching the show, they say, well, my kid's not old enough yet, I don't have to worry about that. When do we start to worry?
They're old enough to type, they're old enough to use the mouse and the keyboard, it's time to worry about it.
And so what do you see? Where do you see, what are the ages where you're starting to see certain things happening, and what kinds of things?
Unfortunately, I've seen as young as 8 years old doing things like maybe taking pictures of themselves on their little child iPad type device and then sharing it with their friends, to obviously teens being involved in things. It can happen at any age group.
And give us some statistics. What's the volume of cases that we're seeing?
Well, we average on our squad approximately 100 search warrants a year for the last 3 years. That doesn't mean we make charges on every one, but a search warrant allows us to collect the evidence that we need for cases. We had approximately 70 plus cases that just dealt with child pornography images. We had people that would travel. There was around 30 individuals that traveled that got locked up for traveling to have sex with a child. We have cases that we work for other jurisdictions where we may just be available to help do a search warrant because somebody from our jurisdiction traveled down to another jurisdiction, Spotsylvania or out to Loudoun County, and we wind up helping them on that aspect. So we're a busy squad. We're very busy.
And how are the results? I mean, what's your success rate? How many of these folks do we catch? And
we catch a lot of them if we have the cooperation of the parents and the victims. unfortunately, a lot of the victims, and this includes boys and girls, they feel that they are the reason that this person's getting in trouble. So they'll try sometimes to destroy evidence, even though the parents may have taken the phone or the computer away, and they will go ahead and find it, because you can't hide anything in your house without your kids knowing where it's at. So they will find the device or whatever you think you've got hidden and destroy it before the police can get it and analyze it for court. It makes it very tough.
And we have to remember we're talking about kids, and something like being a witness in a criminal, legal proceeding is difficult for anybody, but certainly a child.
And then to have to talk about what happened, to have had sex with an adult, or that person really loved them and cared for them, and they don't see that they're being abused, even though they are. And if there's images that were taken at that time, the kids a lot of times don't realize that image is going to follow them for their entire life. That image may pop up on a job application or trying to get into a school that they want to do. They don't think about that. They're living in the moment. So we try to teach them that there's consequences.
And I know that there's people watching right now who are saying, yeah, it's really bad that happens. It's a good thing that my kids aren't the type of kids that get in trouble. And they're mistaken, aren't they?
I'm afraid they are. A lot of times, one of the things I talk about when I talk to parents is that you want to know what your children are out, their social sites that they're on, and what chat groups and some of their friends. When Facebook was very popular, a lot of kids, I have 500 friends. And I would ask them, well, how many of those friends you actually know, or your parents know? Oh, maybe I know a lot of them. And it turns out they don't know that many. Kids will chat with somebody, and if they've chatted with a person on 3 or 4 different occasions, at that point they consider them a friend. They don't consider them a stranger. So to them, they start talking more openly. So it becomes a problem. Parents just need to be aware and really need to be able to talk to their kids and understand what's going on.
And these issues, they cross economic lines, they cross ethnic lines. There's just as many kids who are getting exploited in McLean as there are in the Route 1 corridor in Reston and Clifton and any place else. It's not economic status.
That's correct. Usually they have to at least be able to access some kind of device, a computer. Parents will give a child maybe an Apple Touch. Just the iPad Touch or an iPhone Touch, or maybe just the iPad. And they think, well, it doesn't have a phone so that they can't get in trouble. Well, the children don't talk on the phone with these people most of the time. They're chatting with them. And as long as they can get on the internet, they can get a chat app put up on their phone and start chatting away. And next thing you know, I've had parents say, well, they don't have texting on their machine. Well, there's so many apps out there that are free, and it doesn't cost them anything as long as they can get on the internet.
So really, once you're on the internet, you can figure out how to get to almost anything.
Ask any 6 or 7-year-old.
So what do we do as parents? What are the things that we should do so we can be reasonable and let our kids have access to the internet where it's appropriate? But how do we prevent this?
You have to start out by being parents. You have to be able to discuss with your children. You have to be tech savvy. Don't be the parent that, your child is the one that set up your computer when you got the new computer. You want to understand what's going on. You want to be able to understand what your children are thinking and doing. You want to have dialogue with your children. You may have to resort to having some kind of filtering software on your computer system so you understand. Trust your children after you talk to them, but you've got to verify what they're doing.
And you talk about software. What kinds of software is out there to either block or track sites?
There are all types of software. Most of them will cost you less than $100. Google is your friend. All you have to do is type in filtering software for parents, and there are all kinds of sites out there. Some of them are even free, and they're pretty good. So you can look for it. Some of them allow you to control the internet times, when the access or certain machine can access it. Some of them will capture every chat and send it to you in an email. So there's all kinds of features out there. It depends on what you want.
You got to do your homework.
You do.
Just like we tell our kids, we tell them to do their homework, we have to do ours as parents.
As parents, we have to do our homework. We have to be able to talk to our children, and we have to be able to let them talk to us.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that subject of talking in a little bit of a different way and getting into some of this internet communication. The term cyberbullying, I don't even think that was a term 5 years ago, but now there's a lot of talk about it because there's a lot going on.
Yeah, we've had in the news, you've had stories where kids either committed suicide or there's been fights because they start trash talking each other on the internet. And we're fortunate in Virginia, there's a code in place that deals, there's 3 codes that are in place that deal with cyberbullying, but it's primarily through the schools and what can the school, because a lot of these kids are in schools and they trash talk each other. They show up in school, and next thing you know, there's a fist fight, or somebody's stealing from somebody, or somebody's doing, God knows what to them. So there are some statutes in place, but they're primarily for the schools to have sanctions against people for cyberbullying.
So we're basically talking about what was the playground when we were growing up, now becoming on the internet.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk through a little bit about how you do your job. We all we like police shows on TV, but in real life it's a little different. How does it walk us through a case and show how does it from the time that something shows up on your desk that says, "Detective, here's your next assignment." What does that look like, and how do you get to the courtroom with it?
Well, let's say it's a case that's given to us. Because we're out there doing proactive, where we're out there on our own, digging up our own cases as well. But a lot of times we'll get a case where a parent has discovered that their child has been chatting with an adult, and they're concerned. So it may be they don't even know if there's a crime yet, so they'll contact us. We'll wind up asking for permission to take the device and have it examined forensically to see if there's images or chats that would be something of a nature that would cross the line and become a criminal offense. Once it's become a criminal offense, let's say it's chatting and it's enticement of a child online, which is a crime, then we would go ahead and try and target the individual and find out who he is. We may take over the child's identity online with the parent's permission and chat with this person, let them thinking they're talking to the child, and let them cross the line again with us.
And these, can you trace all of these chats? Are you able to find them all, or are there some types of internet communication that's real time only, and if you're not on the real time, there's no trace?
Unfortunately, that's true. A lot of new software comes out that allows the people to be anonymous. So that is part of the problem. We may not get the chats, but when you have internet access at your home, you get an address from your internet provider. That's an IP address. We're able to track to at least the house where that traffic came from. So once we get there, then it's more detective work. We may have to result in a search warrant to collect evidence. Once we've collected some evidence, then it has to be analyzed. If it's analyzed and we find information, we might find a picture, we might find the chats that correspond with the victim's equipment. Then we have something, we go and talk to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. We'll make a charge. Let's say it's enticement.
So tell me how that happens. So I call you and I say, "Detective, I think my kids are in a chat that I don't want them in." So you come and you take the smartphone, you take it back to the shop and you look through it, and so you can see everything that's coming to that phone?
Depends on the chats, the software that they're using.
And so let's say you finally say, "Okay, here's something coming in," and then you can find out where it came from.
Well, let's say it's a chat that's through iPhone, and they're communicating by phone number. So we have a phone number to use to find out who the other person is on the other side of the chat. If it's email, you have email services that you know the IP address that it's coming from and what's going out. So depending on the kind of software and depending if it's resident on the phone, it may be resident on a service on a server, where we'll have to then subpoena the server through the court to get that information so we have it for our purposes for court.
So if somebody, let's say somebody works for a big entity, maybe it's the government, maybe it's a big company, and they're
Fairfax County?
well, other than Fairfax County, and they're the predator, and they're going into a chat room at work. So when you're coming at it from the angle of you went to the parents, you got their phone, what you're seeing is that something's coming out of the server, and you've got to then find the computer, or can you get to that computer?
It's come to that sometimes. And depending on how the business is set up, they have logs as to who's logging into what and what times. And we may be able to track it down right to the machine, and then it's up to the business whether or not they can say that machine's only used by Mr. Smith or Jones versus it's a group machine. Then we'd have to say, all right, does Mr. Smith or Jones, did he come to work that day? Was he available? Was it possible for him to use it, or someone else used it in his place? So it takes detective work, and sometimes we just can't do it.
Right. So let's say you're tracking something, you track it to, or I might think of as the stereotypical predator. Somebody's in their home, every night they're into these chat rooms. How do you approach that predator? Do you have to set them up in the sting? Are you able to get enough evidence for an arrest warrant off of what you can find through the internet, or what do you need to do?
No, normally it's not just what we find in the internet. We want, at best, to be chatting with them as the person that they were victimizing. So that then we make sure we have all we need in court. It may be a situation, we had an incident where an individual was a sexual offender, and we were chatting with him, and he came back with 3 different IP addresses every time we had different chats with him. Well, by checking with the internet service provider, it created a triangle from 3 different houses. And within that triangle was a sexual predator that had been living there, and he was stealing the internet service from these different homes because they had not locked down their internet.
Oh, like their own personal Wi-Fi.
Exactly. It's just like sitting outside of Panera's and logging in on their Wi-Fi. Well, these people weren't leaving their Wi-Fi wide open. He was able to do it. And his last time he got locked up, he said he'll never get locked up. The cops will never take him. We were able to take him with a ruse. We got him out of the house. We had a female detective walk by saying she was looking for her dog. He came out to try and help find the dog. Unfortunately, he ran into a group of detectives ready to take him down. And we did a search warrant. And we had to have the search warrant so we could find the evidence on his computers as well.
Get in the house, right. Now, you mentioned the Panera. How often do you see that? Or are people sitting at a Panera or in a McDonald's or someplace and using public sources?
Occasionally we do have that problem. And then it requires us to try and narrow down a time frame, and we may have to stake out the areas to see if we see the person that we think is using it. It worries me when you find places that have hot spots that are open to the public, and there may not be any logging as to who's logged in or anything else, and it just comes to that Wi-Fi hotspot. We may not make the case.
I mean, anybody could take a laptop and sit around the corner from the Panera, if that's what it is.
McDonald's, anybody that has free Wi-Fi.
And type in, right. Now, are we, we've talked mostly about the individual predator. We talked a little bit about, gangs and how these groups are connected. How much of that sort of across state lines or even international connection, or do you find in play here?
We have a lot of local problems. I say local, statewide. That is the advantage of having the task force. Anybody that's on our federal task force, they're sworn in as a U.S. Marshal. That gives them authority to make arrests throughout the United States. This ICAC, I have the ability to use the state police to make arrests anywhere else. Normally, my only arrest powers stop at the Fairfax County line. So this allows me to do that.
And do you see, what are the percentages? Are most of these cases locally based, or are we seeing a lot from all over the country?
Well, we've had them come from New Jersey. We've had them come from France to come and have sex with kids locally here in Virginia.
So that's people coming here, or do predators try to lure kids away from their homes here to go other places?
Very seldom, because they know the child doesn't have a means to travel usually. But we've had cases where they have sent them money for bus tickets
And so the
Or-
runaway, for example, if you can convince the child to leave home and I'll meet you at X place.
Exactly. And that's why it's important, if we can, on a runaway case that we suspect there's a problem and the child is actually maybe involved with an adult, we need to get to their computer as soon as possible so we can try and ascertain if there's any chats or any communications between them and somebody else.
Right. So we need to be vigilant as parents and community members, and we could talk a lot longer, but our time is up. I want to thank Detective Sorrentino for taking time to come and discuss this serious topic. It's truly sad we have to think that we have to be concerned about the exploitation of our residents and especially our children. But thanks to the good work of Detective Sorrentino and his department, we can rest assured that something is being done to help keep our children safe. I hope you've enjoyed this segment of Braddock Neighborhood News. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or other needs, please contact my office at 703-425-9300 or email braddock@fairfaxcounty.gov. Tune in next month for another edition, and please remember to look for ways to volunteer. Your community needs you.